Takaoka Takafumi is a young man living a conventional life until he gets a call from the hospital. Apparently, Takafumi's uncle, Yosuke Shibazaki, or his Ojisan, had woken up after being in a coma for the last 17 years. The man was 34 years old by now, and as soon as he woke up, Takafumi found him speaking gibberish. Takafumi naturally assumes that his uncle has lost his mind after all this time, when Ojisan explains how he was in a different world named Grand Bahamal for the last 17 years. As Takafumi was still feeling bad for his uncle, Ojisan demonstrates actual magic to prove that he is not an insane middle-aged man. Takafumi finally believes his uncle, and Ojisan straight away asks about the console war. Takafumi remarks how PlayStation is doing well, and upon hearing that Sega has discontinued their consoles, Oji-san gets so sad that he was willing to enter a coma again. Takafumi sees a lot of potential in Oji-san's magical abilities, so he decides to upload his clips on YouTube so they can profit from them. A little time passed by, and while Takafumi was teaching Oji-san more about the internet and other modern-day shenanigans, the YouTube channel wasn't really doing all that well. Oji-san tells Takafumi some stories about his journeys and reveals how he had met a female elf named Elga who was quite mean to him in the time he spent in that world. Oji-san was quite sure that Elga hated him, but Takafumi catches the drift and figures that Oji-san must be unaware of tsunderes as they got popular while he was still in coma. Oji-san showed Takafumi some of his memories through magic, and that made Takafumi realize that Elga probably had a crush on Oji-san, but Oji-san was too dense to understand. Since Oji-san had no phone, he wins 2G phone from an online auction, but as the shipping was more expensive than the phone itself, Oji-san prefers to make a quick trip to the auction house himself. Oji-san shares some more memories relating to Elga, and Takafumi finally starts to understand that his uncle is a video game addict who really doesn't care about anything else. With their YouTube channel not doing the best, the journey of this uncle-nephew duo begins whilst promising to be anything but conventional. The lack of views had forced our aspiring YouTuber to be tight on the budget, and even though saving money was the priority, Oji-san couldn't help himself from buying an issue of the last ever Sega magazine. Oji-san just wanted to see the top-ranked game on the console, but the results brought him pure disappointment. While the pair was on the topic of video games, Oji-san remarked how he hates RPGs as they are just too hard to contemplate sometimes. Since Oji-san's life in the other world was also like an RPG, he tells Takafumi about how he once had to save an ice witch named Mabel to complete a Dragon Quest line, but he chose to completely ditch Mabel in the end just because he didn't feel like bothering. Takafumi was unable to believe this man, so he just got up and gave Oji-san the Sega Saturn he got for him as a gift. On New Year's Eve, Oji-san told the story of the New Year's event in Grand Bahamal. According to Oji-san, he literally just had dinner at the event alone, and that kept bothering Takafumi as he wasn't able to believe that Oji-san just wasted a special night like that. Takafumi brings the question up again while the two were playing video games, and Oji-san shows Takafumi memories from the time when Mabel visited his room. Takafumi was expecting some romantic action in Oji-san's life, but it turns out that instead of changing himself, Oji-san made Mabel a NEET as well. Takafumi had finally came to terms with Oji-san's priorities, and the pair spent the evening chatting, playing video games, and sharing some stories. On the next day, Takafumi's childhood friend Fujimiya Sumika runs into him, and he invites her to come over to his place. Sumika lets herself in as Takafumi had left the door open, but while she is doing her own little inspection, Oji-san pulls up. Oji-san assumed that Sumika was a stalker or something, and he almost removed her memories if it wasn't for Takafumi making it there in time. Oji-san apologizes, and the group sits down for a formal conversation. Upon hearing that Oji-san went to another world, Sumika becomes certain that this man is insane and that Takafumi should stay away from him. Oji-san observes that Sumika wants to be more than friends with Takafumi, and even after he reads her memories and says them out loud, Takafumi isn't able to get the point. Sumika gets pissed about this living arrangement, and she decides to do something about it herself. Some time passes by, and since Ojisan's YouTube channel still wasn't doing too well, he receives an email from YouTube telling him about how he must maintain at least 1,000 subs if he wishes to have his rights to monetization. Takafumi finds it odd, and while researching, he realizes that people keep unsubscribing as Ojisan was being a jerk to them in the comments. Takafumi emphasizes how Ojisan needs to behave himself in the comments. Ojisan finds the moment fitting, and he starts telling a story about his visit to the city of Lawaldron. Ojisan was alongside Elga, and after hearing Elga brag about the town's strong barrier, Ojisan blows the barriers pretty easily, but then rebuilds the thing later himself as well, putting the townspeople in quite some confusion. The townspeople wanted answers from Ojisan, so Elga stood up for him. Later on, she asks Ojisan to take her for dinner as compensation, but Ojisan runs away, assuming that Elga was blackmailing him. After seeing Ojisan butcher another chance with such a beautiful girl, Takafumi was convinced that this man is a failure in life and that he has no more hope. A while later, Ojisan finally hits those 1,000 subs, and Sumika also continues to visit their place. Ojisan tries to bring the young ones closer to each other, but he isn't able to do much as Sumika won't listen to advice from a creepy gamer. Ojisan uses that big brain and decides to take Elga's form so he can have a girl talk with Sumika. Ojisan introduces himself as Takafumi's aunt now, and while Sumika is still flabbergasted, Takafumi comes back home and convinces Ojisan to drop this counseling for now. Takafumi wanted to make a YouTube video while Ojisan was looking like Elga, but before that, Ojisan projected Takafumi's memories that showed how he remembered Sumika as a scary bully. Takafumi still manages to keep Sumika interested in him without even trying, and Ojisan also succeeds in uploading his latest video. For some reason, Ojisan forgets to add the actual game footage with his face cam, but to his surprise, the video brings him 200k views in just a few minutes. Ojisan wasn't happy that people liked girls more than his gaming videos, but hey, that fat ad revenue got Ojisan the chance to enjoy some premium Japanese cuisine. As the group continues to go through some more of Takafumi's memories, Sumika can't help but get mad at just how rude and masculine Takafumi remembers her to be. Sumika isn't able to get over this, and she chooses to bring up her feminine self from middle school. Sumika's plan backfires when Takafumi prefers to keep her middle school self out of the discussion, as the dude was simply trying not to catch a case. Takafumi had some money left over from his 20th birthday, so he heads out to grab some fresh coffee beans. While he was out, Ojisan continued to annoy Sumika, and he almost completely froze her while trying to save her from the hot coffee. Ojisan leaves the place for now, and while Sumika was in Takafumi's shirt, the dude runs in on her. Takafumi gets extremely embarrassed after seeing her friend like that, and while Sumika wasn't completely against what happened, Takafumi calls for Ojisan by waving a flag, as Ojisan's 2G phone couldn't be used to communicate. Takafumi was down to remove his memories, but Sumika stopped him, leading him to believe that she was just being a good friend. A few days later, Sumika finally turns 20, and since Ojisan didn't have anything special planned for her birthday, he shares some of his wisdom. The other two are left speechless as this time around, Ojisan's words were actually meaningful. Ojisan follows up by showing the two some memories from his own 20th birthday. As soon as Ojisan loads the memories up, no one, absolutely no one, was able to tell that he was 20 in that memory. This man looked exactly the same 15 years ago. As shocking as the age reveal was, further in the memory, Elga joins Ojisan in a beautiful dress, and while Takafumi was getting all hyped in his apartment, Ojisan still fumbled the bag. Ojisan assumed that Elga was there to blackmail him about the barrier he destroyed earlier, so he started bribing her with food. Ojisan gets up afterwards, and he tells Elga to follow him back to his room. Elga starts getting all embarrassed from the imagination, but as soon as they arrive to Ojisan's room, this man just says goodbye to Elga and heads inside alone. Ojisan had just used Elga as a crutch since he was drunk, and later, Takafumi and Sumika notice how Elga had cried a lot last night. After seeing just how bad Ojisan is at taking hints, Sumika prefers to drink some more, and in the process, she shares some with Ojisan. Oji-san wasn't able to handle alcohol at all, and he gets confused between video games and the real world, truly making things way more chaotic. June had already arrived, and to help Oji-san out with his uselessness, the others started looking for professions Oji-san might be able to make a career out of. Sumika suggests baseball, but Oji-san expresses their true hate for sports, confirming he's a gamer nerd down to his core. The group continues to think about more sports when Oji-san happens to remember the time he almost got assassinated. The memories continue, and we see how Oji-san was walking through a forest when he got jumped by an assassin in a hood. The assassin was just Mabel, who was mad at Oji-san as he made her life a living hell. As Oji-san had defeated the dragon without fulfilling Mabel's supposed questline, she had nothing to do with her life now. Oji-san noticed how Mabel didn't really want to kill him, and as soon as he called her out on it, she passed out. Oji-san was generous enough to take Mabel back to her place, but this dude literally dragged her the whole way. After reaching the inn, Oji-san gave Mabel some food, and she explained how the villagers destroyed her home and told her to get a real job instead of guarding that ice sword. Mabel didn't know what to do now, so Oji-san started dropping his wisdom game yet again. The man told her that his biggest accomplishment in his world was killing a video game boss in under 30 seconds, and that Mabel should do whatever she wants as it is her life at the end of the day. Oji-san convinces Mabel to use her ice sword herself and make a living by becoming an adventurer. Mabel was already blushing and her heart was warming up when Oji-san did some of his usual creepy stuff and sped up the process. Mabel's ice sword was rapidly melting when Oji-san gave her a ring, just like he gave one to Elga earlier. Mabel assumed that this was a proposal from Oji-san, but little did she know. Oji-san reveals how Mabel can sell this ring to eat for a while, and that just destroys the whole mood, making Mabel furious. Elga runs into the room after hearing all the noise, and she joins forces with Mabel to freeze Oji-san, hence completing the story of him being assassinated. The memory was still playing, and while talking to Elga, Mabel reveals how her clan was formed by a Japanese warrior who got a special power when he came to this world. This got Oji-san thinking, and he rewinds the memory to see what his own power was. The group goes over the memory of the time when Oji-san was isekai'd, and it turns out that he requested the power to speak Grand Bahamaal's language so he could clear the misunderstanding of people mistaking him for an orc. At the end, the ability upgraded him from an orc to an intelligent orc, and in the present time, Oji-san lost his biggest flex when he found out that someone on the internet has defeated that same boss in a mere 12 seconds. Oji-san's depressing start had gotten the other two feeling bad, so our group took a real quick coffee break before jumping back into action. Oji-san's first memory continues afterwards, and we see how the adventurers sold Oji-san off to a freak show who barely gave a couple of bronze coins for him. Oji-san wasn't happy after remembering this horror memory, but the show goes on anyways. Oji-san is locked up in a cell, where he spends a few days without any supplies. Oji-san was on the verge of madness when a ray of moonlight happened to enter his cell. The moonlight was actually a spirit, and upon touching it, Oji-san gets his very first magic spell. Oji-san lets the animals out before leaving, but outside, he had to kill all of them as they were untamed. After Oji-san had escaped the freak show, Sumika and Takafumi decided that they should leave the rest for another day, but they couldn't help themselves from continuing when Oji-san baits them. Oji-san skips ahead, and we get to see the time when he saved Elga from the venom dragon. Oji-san was just trying to be nice, but he ended up upsetting the elf, and that probably was the reason she kept following him. Watching Elga gets the others curious about what happened after Oji-san's attempted assassination. The memory is forwarded, and we find Oji-san in bed with both girls right next to him. Since it was already morning by the time Oji-san unfroze, he take the girls out for breakfast, where they officially introduce themselves to sort of form a party. Oji-san introduces himself as the Wolf Gun Blood. And just like us, both Sumika and Takafumi found it quite a bit over the top. Oji-san reveals how he wanted to help the hero in raiding a dungeon, and as the hero was supposedly a woman hunter, Elga finds herself getting jealous. The three part ways for now, and as Ojisan leaves to look for the hero, Elga goes back to rebuy Ojisan's ring, while Miss Mabel prefers to call it a day and sleep like an unemployed bum. The stupid ending to the party left Takafumi and Sumika quite unimpressed, and to cheer them up, Ojisan was kind enough to treat them to some ramen. At a later date, Ojisan was still complaining about how Elga kept berating him when he told Takafumi about the time he tried getting his hoodie back, but in return, Elga knocked him out cold and never gave him the hoodie. Elga kept the hoodie, but in exchange, she had left Ojisan with a dress she used to wear. Ojisan gives the dress to Sumika, and as she tries it on, looking at her reminds Ojisan of Elga. A couple of days later, the group gets together like usual, and Ojisan announces how he has named his ability as Wild Talker. With the name decided, Ojisan's next task was to figure out how Wild Talker was activated. Sumika had to dip as she had an errand to run at college, and that leaves Takafumi alone to spend time with Ojisan. Naturally, Ojisan was still playing those old video games of his, and after Takafumi asks him about whether he has learned anything worthwhile from these games or not, Ojisan decides to put on a show once again. Ojisan shares a story of the time when he met some heroes in the village of Dold. The heroes had requested Ojisan to help in defending the village against a lot of orcs, and Ojisan actually defeated the whole horde with the tactic he learned in video games. Ojisan befriended those heroes after teaming up with them, but as they were heading on a journey, the mage Alicia reveals how she saw Ojisan while he was building the barrier. Ojisan decides to call it quits on the friendship right then and there, and he erases the memories of the three, so everything's back to normal. Pro gamer tactic, right? After Takafumi mentions meeting this group again, Ojisan forwards the story and shows how he met them again whilst they were stuck in another pinch. The heroes requested Ojisan's help in defeating a beast, but as the beast's descripting met Sonic, Ojisan got a little too hyped up. Upon finding out that the actual hedgehogs are not blue, Ojisan found himself getting disappointed and absolutely obliterated the poor guy. As soon as Ojisan's story concludes, the two find out that Sumika had left her phone at their home. The guys fly over to return it to her, and after seeing Sumika around a creepy dude, Takafumi heads in for the rescue. Ojisan had given Takafumi some temporary magic, but it turns out that Takafumi was worried for nothing as the creepy guy was Sumika's little brother Chiaki. Sumika is left flattered after coming to know about how Takafumi was ready to defend her, and as the group gets back home, Ojisan finishes his hero story by revealing the crusading hero he was looking forward to helping was Alicia all along. With another day filled with Ojisan's crazy otherworldly experiences concluding, our recap for the day comes to an end as well. Thank you for sticking till the end, and let us know in the comments if you guys want a second part of the series. Don't forget to leave us a like and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.